Happy New Year, Nick.
Happy new one to you, my friend.
What's happening?
Good day today. Been out on our mutual friend's boat.
Have you?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
What?
I had a lot of work to do, but it's been raining here in Wales for the last sort of 6 weeks. Southwesterly winds every single day, and we had a little bit of sunshine. I was meant to be doing a lot of marking, earmuffs, please work. And I had an invite to go and join our mutual mate Tom on his new boat. And it was lovely. There's this thing called the sun in the sky. It's amazing. And I just thought it was summer. It was quite cold, but we had a little pool round and dropped me off at Tusker Rock, which is about, how far offshore is that?
About 2K-ish.
Yeah, cluster of rocks offshore with this really, really scary bell-ringing buoy.
Yeah.
Jumped off. Obviously, had to have the picture on there. And then swam back.
So swam 2K back. That's kind of Porthcawl way, isn't it?
Yeah, back to the harbour. Bit choppy. Some great debris. A few logs to go past. But good. How about you? What was your Saturday?
Saturday, so I've been out with the family. We went up to Gzehtmayr and Tom Pentra, where we did some climbing outdoors.
He's playing this down. He's shown me the pictures. These look scary.
Yeah, it's a good crag. So we do a lot of bouldering and a lot of climbing, like sport climbing as a family. So it is cold, and it was definitely cold up in the valleys, but we saw that same fabled sun and, parked up and hiked up the side of the mountain to a crag that kind of overlooks that whole valley, sort of above Tonopandi, and spent about 4 hours climbing, freezing our fingers.
Yeah, but I don't understand how you hold on, and it's so cold.
Yeah,
no gloves.
It's a funny one. There's good friction, but you can't really feel, especially the first couple of routes, you can't really feel the rock because your hands are so cold and warming up. So you just sort of blindly hold on and pull yourself up.
So this is very exciting. This is our first interview podcast. Who are we interviewing?
We are interviewing Grant Gzehtmayr of the infamous Dawnstalkers.
Dawnstalkers are famously known for their community-based dipping down in Penarth, so South Wales coast. Really exciting because that community's grown. We've obviously gone past and done swims there, and we've seen the community grow over the last few years. Really interesting stories from Grant. Dawnstalkers is massive now. It's got its own beer. It's got its own festivals.
They got sauna.
What haven't they got? They got showers.
Yeah, they have gone from like a handful of like people dipping around kind of lockdown time, and at times now they attract almost 100 people to Penarth Beach, and they always, as their name suggests, dip and swim in the sea at dawn, year round.
Year round.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I look at them going, how are you doing this? We're in like full ninja neoprene suits. They're just in their bikinis.
Nips out.
Nips are out, and they are bloody solid.
Yeah, fair play.
They are not their nips, that is.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
They are as well, yeah.
And do you know what? Like, we know Grant, and he's part of our kind of extended community here in South Wales, so we thought he'd be a perfect person to dive right in with episode number 1.
Here we go. Welcome. I'm Nick.
Croeso, I'm Bryce. You're listening to Swim Routes,
an open water swim podcast.
So it's 6th of Jan, so I was in the sea about 7:15, on the beach from about 6:30. It was a busy one because the sunrise was epic. Winter sunrise is beautiful.
It's the first time we've had sun in so long.
Yeah. It's been winter holidays have been pretty miserable, right?
I forgot what it looked like. What's this golden thing in the sky?
we did foil ourselves a little bit by having a sauna on the seafront for winter holidays. I think all of our cold habituation has been ruined.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Grant. Like, where did you grow up?
I was actually born in Scotland, so I'm not technically Welsh, although I have a fairly decent quarter Welsh heritage. And actually, probably the strongest roots are Irish, really. So, so I'm a plastic Scotsman, live in Wales. Was brought up in Penarth, but lived abroad a bit as a kid. My dad was a civil engineer, so got to see some different cultures and different parts of the world. Lived in hot places where you got to wander around fairly freely and spend a lot of time at the beach, actually, oddly.
Yeah, and so you grew up in Penarth, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. So, mostly I went to school here. And yeah, as I said, lived in Bahrain for 3 years and lived in the West Indies for 3 years before that.
Did swimming come into any of that, or going to the beach? I mean, growing up, was that a part of your life?
So living in the West Indies for sure. I know we live on an island, but we're talking an island that you could walk around in a decent day. So spent a lot of time at the beach as a kid for sure. So generally living in Penarth growing up, I lived near the sea, but I don't think I really appreciated what was there. Really, the sort of reconnection was lockdown. Spent all my time down there.
I mean, this is interesting. Like, I know you, Grant, through another life, and Nick, I know you from another life. And over the last sort of however many years recently, I've actually now gotten to know both of you again through the sea and through a shared connection with the sea. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Like, how I think we almost might not have carried on being friends had it not been without this shared kind of sort of later in life strong relationship with the sea. So when did you first start that relationship, Grant? Like, you've just mentioned lockdown. I think that was a big thing for a lot of people. Tell us a little bit more about how that happened for you.
So it starts a little bit pre-lockdown. So I had a fairly decent house fire, and we'd moved back to Penarth. Lola, my daughter, was at the time 5, so it was 5 years ago. She's just turned 10. And really fortunate we got back into Penarth because my parents moved, so we moved back into my family home. And the fire effectively gutted the inside. So had a fairly difficult experience, came out through the roof of the fire brigade, and then had to move out. So went to live in my parents' house with a 5-year-old, 2 geriatric cats, and a puppy. So people who come down to the seafront have met Dexter. That was Dexter. So I was going through quite a hard time post fire. I was dealing with a load of stuff. I was doing quite a lot of personal development, and we had a dog that wanted to shit on their cream carpets. So I'd get up early and go out, and like really fortunately we live and they live even closer to the seafront. So I was walking that section in loops. I tend to do some of the sort of support calls I was doing on personal development at that time in the morning. So it sort of all tied in, and that became my structure. And then 10 months later, when we got to move back to our house, my routines kind of changed. It's just, slightly different location, that bit further from the seafront or whatever. Didn't have to walk the dog so early. So routines changed. And then lockdown kind of reconnected that. So our friend Peter with Stall Coffee and his bike went down and did a sunrise coffee sort of, not really a club. He was just going down there for sunrise, and it gave a reason to be there. So I was out walking the dog, back kind of forced and spending more time out of the house because we were in it so much, and started connecting that loop again. Kind of stood looking at the sea for quite long periods of the day, and then add that to kind of, I guess, social media connections on through lockdown. I started following a sort of movement called Dawn Days, which was a load of kind of outdoors type and surf photographers and filmmakers that all got sent home during lockdown, and home wasn't really home because they were, just kind of digital nomads, and wondered what the fuck to do with themselves, and started paddling out the blue hour and taking these just beautiful photographic and filmic shots of pre-dawn, water at dawn, sun, the light through the sea, and I connected with that because I was spending so much time at the seafront, and also wondered, well, I don't have the equipment or perhaps the skill set to do some of that, but how do I interact with that? And I guess again through personal development, there was a lot of stuff that I thought, I'm not good enough for that. I can't do that, but I wondered, how do I connect? And a few people, including some of the guys from the Dawn Days project. In fact, Rich won't remember this probably, but during his row, he messaged something really specifically that stuck with me about the belief about what you can output and how you can occur it's all with you. So, I was creating the not good enough, can't contribute, who am I to deserve to say anything type narrative, and I got bored of it. So I thought, well, let's just crack on and see what happens. And more people came. The idea of getting in the sea, from seeing the odd person in the sea and Wim Hof and trying cold showers, which I thought were fucking awful. So what do you do next? Well, the seafront's there. I'll go get in it, and people took notice. And
do you think they took notice because you were dipping in Penarth?
But yeah, I mean, it's brown, so the Severn Estuary has a lot of silt in it, and it's brown. As it turns out, the water quality report now suggests that actually the water's a bit cleaner than many people thought.
There's definitely a stigma with getting in at Penarth. I know when we've got in at Penarth, people have said, "Oh, you can't go in from there. You'll die if you go in the water there." We've had that. So I guess to see you lot going in the water, there were a lot of onlookers are thinking, "What is going on there?"
Yeah, I think so. There was certainly some interest. There was the time of year, so I started consistently. Was it sort of December 2020? I'd got in a couple of times, and then consistently as part of Dry January for January 21. There were a couple of people who were good photographers, Stolkowski being one of them. They were down there. It gave something interesting to kind of photograph and talk about. We all know cold water. The buzz is real. So you get out of the water and you get quite enthusiastic. I also talk to everyone. So, being amiable, chatting to people, and being, high after getting out of the sea, it's sort of it's a compelling concoction if you're actually interested in chatting to people. And I probably pissed a few people off as well.
For people who don't know what the Dawnstalkers is,
who is Dawn and why are you stalking her?
Yeah.
So, the premise is it's a call to action to go and do something different, perhaps start your day in a different way. And essentially, we do that by getting in the sea at sunrise or just before every day of the year. And, there's a lot of bravado in that. And there's my wife, Beth's, I think we're starting to get a bit pissed off with me disappearing for hours every morning and kind of said, "You're just a bunch of fucking Dawnstalkers," and I'm pretty sure that was a word that had been used for like very late nights when the sun started to come up.
So rather than take your wife's hint and maybe stop going every day to the beach at sunrise, you decided to build an entire movement out of it.
Interesting. I'd never looked at it quite like that. I'll suggest he doesn't watch this.
Are you still married?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we always had quite a yin yang relationship, so it works. And again, the whole platforms are based a bit around that as well. So there is some dark and light. There's some humor and some dark humor and pirate bravado, and it's all smoke and mirrors and bullshit.
But how do you manage to get down every day? Because most times we're down there, and we're definitely not down there every day. I mean, it was quite nice that we don't have to do it every day. We have a little bit of a break. But you're down there all the time. How do you manage that?
I say I'm 97%, so I probably drop a day a month. And again, this is going to we're building a case for divorce here. But the rest of my household don't like getting up. They don't like getting up that early. So
okay,
and particularly in the middle of the summer, you can be out for sunrise and spend 3 hours out and be back before anyone else wakes up.
So, like Nick just mentioned, I mean, we we swim at very similar areas to you, South Wales, a little bit in Penarth, Barry, further west.
Well, you at least start in similar places, and then you epic swimmers.
They're ATB swims. We do, it's kind of more of a fitness exercise thing, as well as, sort of having positive mental kind of health parts to it. But we get breaks. So we swim probably in winter at least twice a week, in summer 3, maybe 4 times a week, but they're kind of longer distances. So we need breaks between that. So for us, motivation is, we don't always want to go in and get in, but we do. But we also have that break from that kind of constant daily thing where we can go and do other things, and we can kind of revolve our swimming diary around other activities, whereas yours is every day, So do you feel the pressure now with the Dawnstalkers being what it is? Do you feel the pressure to be there every day, or do you still really enjoy it? I mean, how much motivation does it really kind of need for you to sustain that?
So I think I've built myself my own accountability, because there's an expectation that I'm there, and there was a period where I'd been very consistent. So I'd done quite a lot of days in a row, and someone said, take a day off because you're counting numbers now. And that was quite early on. So, we were well over 100 days, but nowhere near 1,000. And I'm really glad that I didn't chase the number. And probably even year 2, if I took a day off, I don't think I got shit for it, but the whole platform is designed to poke fun in friendship. So, but people, I tell people to call me out, and they do. I felt the need to be there. I mean, so my sobriety journey went alongside beginning to get in the sea. So there was certainly elements of pressure to be there. There is, there's days when you sort of lie in bed, you wake up, think, I'll snooze the alarm for 10 minutes. And it's very rare that I don't actually just get up, and I can't tell you what that is and why I sit up and get out of bed. But it's got to be something to do with what's going on down at the seafront. But I can take a holiday, and I can go elsewhere without feeling too much guilt.
I get that with what you said about counting numbers. I understand that, because I have that kind of OCD approach where every swim's got to be over 2K. I've got to do a minimum of 20K a month, whatever season it is, and I kind of feel like I sort of beat myself up if we don't do that, which forces me probably for at least the last 3 years to have not gone below any of those numbers. But
I think it's a really difficult thing, isn't it? Because
it's horrible. Yeah, because I look back at, say, a year, and I go, 1 year I went over 400K or whatever. And then another year I'm like, I did 367. Okay, whatever. And then I'm like, I'm letting myself down. But I've definitely had to have words with myself about that, because that's stupid. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I enjoy it, because like you, I've got a real close-knit group of friends that I enjoy hanging out with, that we all do that on the same level, and we sort of all enjoy it for the same reasons. We have the same approach, and like yourself, I kind of thrive off that. My community is much smaller. It revolves about 6 of us in total, generally, with then an extended family outside of that circle. But
yeah, I'm just an addict, Bryce. That's what it is. You talk about the exit, sobriety is
addictive personalities. I think both of us, Nick, I know you have that as well, and I certainly have
but
that.
Not with the numbers. I'm just anti-numbers, man. I quite like winding you up with not going 2K, and it just breaks you mentally. I can see you.
But isn't that that's just to kind of hit off Bryce's energy and see if you can chip away?
Yeah. Well, recently we turned up a couple of months ago, and he had to be, I don't know what you were worried about. Maybe you had to be somewhere, or worried that we had the timing wrong or something. He was like, should we just do this 1 point instead? And I was like, no. Why would we do that? We just got to get down there and get on with it and swim quicker, and you can still get to work. It's not a good thing, but we can laugh about it.
So that's my work, and your wife not watching this.
But it's I mean all these numbers and the all or nothing, and it's almost why sometimes you don't want to commit to things because you think you're going to get stuck, or at least so fixated that if it doesn't work out. But yet on the other hand, if you don't have kind of some kind of goal, then
Yeah.
you've got nothing to reach for. So it's I see it as a really, particularly when it's something that you want to do. It's not like something you want to tick off. It's like I want to keep doing this sustainably for myself.
I'm really interested in obviously you said 97%. So is there any condition or any time of year or anything that you just is a no, and it is like a bugbear or something, just a real challenge for you to get down? What's that 3%? Why does that stop you? Is it?
I think so. No, that it's not weather related, although the platform doesn't swim under a red weather warning. I said that carefully. Yeah. So we don't promote swimming when there's a red weather warning. I guess if there was an epic sewage spill, I've gotten to see pretty much every day and never got ill. I'm not trying to get ill. And I think I did get misquoted by a paper saying I swallowed sewage. The water smelled tangy one morning and it didn't taste quite right. I don't think that's quite the same thing, but they did put it in quote marks. So.
Just going back on, you've mentioned it a couple of times, kind of sobriety being a thing, and obviously for you, dawn stalking and dipping, and it is a big part of your sobriety journey. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Not at all. If you look at dopamine as the river of life, which I think it was Andrew Huberman called it that, and he probably paraphrases other people, but in terms of it being the kind of life force, I certainly chased highs. So alcohol probably not the particularly problem for me, but it was a gateway to doing everything else, and I chased festival experiences, and I think got older, stopped going out so much, and nightclubs don't really do it for me anymore. It was that sort of experience in a field, kind of expansive, locked in for a weekend, and I was looking for those experiences at home, and slowly not finding them, and actually getting bored and more reclusive, and I was noticing that even during those experiences, and was looking for an alternative. Really, I was searching, and it really, I say happy accidents, you could say divine intervention, but the sea, cold water, community, and element of coffee, doing it at the opposite times of the day, it literally was a substitute, and those things all built organically, but I effectively swapped one for the other. And actually, Nick, to go back to the 97% is so I was, and again seeing a bit of the all or nothing. So like having to be at Seafront every day, and so I've played with 97% sobriety as well. So I've taken year 3, I've taken 4 festival weekends off effectively, and gave myself the freedom to have some of those experiences the same way I did previously, and then get straight back on it and get back in the sea.
And is basically, you're talking about balance, aren't you? It's like trying to find that balance, because too much of one or too much of the other can send you too far down that hole, whatever that hole is. Yeah, balance is really important, isn't it? And balancing your vices with what makes you tick and what keeps you on a positive path. I can completely relate to that.
I guess I wouldn't have necessarily seen it as balance, and I'm still playing with what that balance looks like. And I guess it'll be it's almost a forever unfolding. And I totally get why there's a big sober movement now, and you see a lot of preachy output's the wrong word, but there's kind of a pedestal output. And I totally get why people are like that, because there's a self-fulfilling element to it. So it's positive helping other people, and it's positive talking about it. And there's also a re-fulfillment to yourself that you're doing the right thing. And it just, and I think that's awesome. And it's not me, because I don't have a social output in that way. So yeah, I'm trying to, or at least I'm finding a balance.
It's interesting you say about you flip the vices for the morning time. You've got that dopamine hit in the morning. It must have been hard to almost by the night. Then the night comes around when usually the vices that you used to have would come around. The strength required then to not fall back into that.
Oh, I was really tired, Nick. in the middle of summer, I was knackered.
Middle of summer, it's like a 4 a.m. start.
Yeah,
He's in bed.
Yeah. You touched on it earlier about going swimming in bad conditions and that sort of stuff. That's a really interesting point. So the Dawnstalkers now, from what we've seen, sometimes you have 5-10 people turn up. Obviously the hardcore in the winter and some of those more challenging mornings. But in the summer, you've had about 100 people turn up, on those real beautiful days.
Yeah. And actually this morning, so we're midwinter, we were well over 100 this morning.
Wow. That's really interesting. You've got a lot of like first timers turning up. You've got like people who travel, who are experienced. You've got people who turn up every day. How do you manage that many people? Like, do you feel a responsibility towards those people, especially when they turn up en masse? Like, I'm interested on how that works with you guys.
Yeah, I think we've broken down some barriers for people to show up. So it's quite accessible in terms of you can drive in. Having huge numbers and sort of managing or mitigating risk, I suppose. We don't all get in at once. We sort of tend to use a slipway or the shit pipe as it's known, which is the CSO, the combined sewage outflow, when it's low tide. But so they're relatively tight access points. So we never got in en masse, and I think that is positive for kind of supporting people because it doesn't create absolute carnage as you all get into the water. That's the one bit. People tend to sort of get in small groups, and we've cultivated a kind of mentality of supporting each other. And I think most dip groups, swim groups, clubs would support each other in the same way. We certainly, the first time we hit 100, had a bit of a meltdown. We've had parking issues. We've had some fairly serious issues, not necessarily from actually getting in the sea, but at the shore. And
can you tell us about some incidents? Some good juicy incidents that have happened and scary moments. Come on.
I mean, I've nearly the dog's been caught in the current, and so Penarth's got a very, it's got the second largest, or at least the Seven Estuaries got the second largest tidal range in I think the world. So we get a very strong left or right current. We don't really have a rip tide inside the sort of area that people tend to dip. I know you guys go out a bit further, so there probably are some different things going on out in the channel. You're not going to get swept out. You're going to have to walk back, so you get swept one way or the other. So we've had the odd person who's not been able to swim back to where they started, get out and walk. The dogs started to disappear off towards Cardiff Bay, and we've had to fish them out. Bags left on the beach, and no one can see a swimmer. And we've had the odd people slipping over in pebbles and injuries like that. And we've also had a lot of support from, liaison with the RNLI, looking at throw line training and just looking at how you sort of mitigate risk and, how you support each other to enjoy what we're doing, but not do it completely stupidly. So, for instance, when there's a red weather warning, if there's been high winds and it's a high tide, there could be debris in the sea. And that's, something I guess to start with we hadn't really thought about, but the currents bring some big ass bits of shit down the channel. You've probably bumped into a couple of things out in the middle, haven't you?
In my channel swim from Penarth to Clevedon, I managed to swim into the only 6-foot log that was seen floating in the channel that day and swam into it head first right in the middle of it all, and I failed to see the warning waves and shouts from the safety boat and headbutted it about 3 or 4 hours into a swim, which was fun. But yeah, you're right, like everything you've said, Penarth is very strong tidal currents. We've got the second highest tidal range in the world next to Canada, I believe. And the sheer amount of water which is filling up the channel and emptying out the channel every 6 hours is huge, can be on a big spring tide up to 15 meters. So yeah, it's no kind of laughing matter, but like you said, it's lateral. So you'll feel yourself very easily being swept one way or the other, but not out. And I mean, that can be really scary for people that don't know what to expect. And let's face it, 99% of people do not know what to expect.
Yeah, and I think the platform has, again, I've talked about the bravado and the light and dark. We are quite pushy in terms of a call to action, but we'll sort of say, well, we'll pull you in, but we'll bowl your hand while we do it, type thing. And I don't mean pull you in the sea, but the call to action is to get people there. But we are going to support people when they get there and explain kind of what to expect, how it works, and I guess if someone is nervous or not a strong swimmer, there are certain times where we would suggest they don't get in.
Have you had any personal moments where you were scared, or any times you thought, shit, I fucked up here?
I've done a couple of swims in Penarth where I've just realised that the people I'm swimming with have a much greater ability than I do, and I've kind of, again, the bravado's got me so far, and then I'm no longer keeping track with them and getting swept off in the other direction. And while probably personal safety isn't a massive issue, the ability and knowledge are being questioned at that point. And it's how people get into trouble is you start to get, the demons come into the back of your head. You start to get a little bit scared. That pier starts approaching fast, and suddenly you think, shit, I'm in the wrong place. Rub it, get a barnacle bite, and you're bleeding. And then you're thinking, perhaps it was better off I wasn't here. I think actually the place I got the most into trouble was not swimming, but was getting in the river in Val d'Isere.
And that, like what you're talking about there's a lot of it is about awareness and local knowledge. Like, one glove doesn't fit all when it comes to the sea. There's so much information. Okay, there's a baseline information which, depending on your location, your area, affects the whole area. So, if you look at the south coast of Wales and the way the tide moves in and out of the Bristol Channel, that affects that whole area. However, then when you localize that information to, Penarth or Barry or Sully, and those places are only like, say, 5-10 miles apart, even just in that small stretch there, you've got completely different rules on the actual beach. And those things are created by the headlands, by the bays. You have bays which are protected, you have bays which are exposed to the currents, you have headlands which create back eddies and all sorts of stuff going on. So that there, it's like that local knowledge, isn't it? And I guess for you guys, the important thing is just making people aware of what to expect when they step into the sea at Penarth, especially if you can tell that somebody's kind of fresh and keen, but inexperienced. We've got to say, your branding is on point. It's really good. You've got a good name, you've got a good logo, and your social media is also spot on. Tell us a bit about that. How did these things come about? Obviously, you started out where you started and it kind of evolved into this bigger thing, but now there are kind of more of you involved. You've got a really good photographer who's quite prolific at taking photos of people who turn up and making them look like rock stars. How much of that was naturally evolved, and how much of it do you actually focus on?
So it was all relatively organic. So our photographer, James Richardson, Halfwit, he was coming down and interacting with the community, and at some point thought it might be fun to keep documenting it, and then did it once and went, I think I'm going to add this to my daily routine. So there was kind of a perfect storm of people looking to do things and connect that really supported the platform. Our graphic designer, Steve, he took kind of the beginning of my ideas and then just totally transformed them into what you see now. And again, met him swimming. All of our relationships that really work have happened by happy accident chatting at the seafront. That's how we decide whether something's right or wrong. If it's fitted and seemed natural and kind of happened almost by accident, then it's probably right. And if it's too contrived, then it's not for us. I still don't know why I've got a team of people who are happy to show up at meetings and do stuff with me. and yet they keep coming, and it's that, that part's just magic. And I think each person has created their own narrative about what it means to them.
There's so many amazing little stories that we'd love to get some of those characters on here as well to share that.
How many people are involved, and also, are you set up as some sort of community group like a CIC or anything like that?
Not currently. We are due to be, and we've kept. I am the root cause of that. That there's an element of wanting it to be right, not to mess it up. There's also I guess, fear of structure or letting go of things has meant that we've never quite turned ourselves into an official entity. And I think we've looked at charity status, we've looked at CIC model, and I think probably CIC is the way we'll end up. And for a while I went, actually, who are we to be a charity of any forms? We're not deserving of being a charity. It's because effectively the core part of what we do is free, and we'll carry on being free.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, a lot of people would say that they probably see the Dawnstalkers and that community that meet in Penarth every morning as being a really positive part of their mental health. Many people would actually attribute that. Okay, maybe they're attributing cold water dipping or whatever, improving their mental health, but ultimately people like a community, people like to join in, people feel more motivated by doing something as a group, or many people do anyway. And undoubtedly the Dawnstalkers have been a really big part of that for a lot of people. So you say that you're not helping people. Maybe you didn't just say that, but you're kind of giving off the impression that, like, who are we, but you are making a big positive impact on a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I get that there's some development for me in that area. It's a block that I'm creating, and actually being an entity gives us an opening to speak to businesses and look at funding. It's not directly a charity. It's a support mechanism and an opportunity for others to support you. I guess I really want it to be right.
It's like another layer of pressure, maybe.
Yeah, rigidity maybe. So I quite like not doing what I'm told.
It's that pirate attitude that you guys put out there, isn't it, with the Dawnstalkers? I like that,
I guess the humour in that is actually we are an organisation and we've got a committee and we've got a group of people. So all of it's already there. I just don't want it to be called that, because then it seems, official.
You mentioned about sort of light and dark, and also touched on addiction. Oh, obviously, if we're talking about social media, has that ever become an issue? Social media addiction, having to be, everything's run through Instagram. Has that ever been an issue for you?
I feel that it, like reposting people and that interaction sort of reinforces the small bit of interaction we've had at the beach. So it occurs like a requirement to keep feeding. And while I see it as a mechanism that's created some really positive connection, there's certainly a balance for me is how ongoingly, particularly as the platform, that specific part of the platform grows, how do we make it sustainable? Because, I get there's also an element of belief as would anyone else do that, particularly if it was their kind of job.
It looks like a job. It looks like a full-time job.
The simple answer is there is an element that's going to have to be considered at some point, probably in the relatively near future, because the projects and the things that I'd like to take on and the platforms to take on will require some input, which will mean I'll have to take it away from somewhere else.
Can you tell us a bit about those projects?
So we've got the sauna that was at the Seafront as a winter pop-up. So we're looking to see how we can get something like that at Penarth Seafront permanently. We're interacting with a number of sort of wellbeing festivals and mental health and wellbeing show. So looking to kind of curate a certain amount of the spaces, provide something that sits within those spaces. And we've also just started a collaboration with the tuning room in Cardiff Bay to put on some breathwork events on a monthly basis with them. So it's sort of playing into some of the strengths that we've already got and some of the things we've already been doing. And then also we would really like a base of some form. So some form of community space, ideally in Penarth, near the seafront. There is a community space that we're interacting on at the moment and kind of looking at how could we bring more of the kind of well-being and community, but into a space that we inhabit during the day?
Yeah, we experienced your sauna,
Experience is the word.
it was great. We went for a swim. We swam Penarth to Lavanok.
So good.
Timed it well so that we could get in there as soon as you were kind of open on your opening day. I might like to add, I know that you say that you could fit 11 people in there, but I think there are about 6 of us. But if you've ever seen Tom, who swims with us, and also, to be fair, Nikki, are both absolute units. So trying to squeeze anyone else in with these guys in a sweaty sauna, I think there were 5 of us and it felt full. But
A lot of sweaty men.
I'd slipped down the drain. I'm pretty skinny, but yeah, it was amazing. It was really good, and there were people just loving it in the cold sea, in the hot sauna, in the cold sea, in the hot sauna. So fair play. Also, you didn't charge. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you ran this as a you book online over the Christmas New Year period. I don't think you charged anyone for that. Like, how do you feel about monetizing the Dawnstalkers?
So, you know that we've got some merch and we've got some great branding. So having something that people can buy into, I quite quickly got over myself in terms of charging for stuff because it allowed people to connect and buy into it, like the brand. And I wanted to create some form of brand streetwear type thing since I was a kid, I think probably. Again, we talked about how do I feel in terms of my own value and who am I to put this stuff out, and then I had a purpose for it. So that kind of came out with some merch. Looking at monetizing, a lot of people asked me quite early on, like, when you're going to start charging people to get in the sea, and I thought that was ridiculous, but I got their point. Mental health is at the moment such a kind of buzzword, and it adds a whole level of the opportunity to market and charge for things, and there's so many things that we can do that are completely free. So that's always got to be our base point, but also things have to energetically support themselves, and stuff costs money, so it can't always be free. If you believe that money is energy, that these things need to energetically support themselves, and it needs to be cyclical, but they're not projects to out and out make profit or profiteer off the community that's already at the seafront. And I'm always really conscious of that. And that almost becomes a block sometimes, is I'm so rigid one way that it probably stops the opportunity to ask for support money or help in the right places at the right time, because I'm overly conscious of not doing that kind of profiteering. We want to plunder, we're pirates, not.
Yeah, I get that. But people want to support a good thing. It's just doing it the right way, isn't it? Like, people want to buy a cool T-shirt with a sick logo, and they also, a lot of people identify as, open water swimmer, a dipper, a Dawnstalker. It's a part of a gang, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's absolutely important. Yeah, I guess it's ongoingly when we put other things on, it's how do you make it a balance of being accessible and open to all, but yet still support itself. And we put events on that have wiped their own face, we've put some that have run at a loss, and we've put some that have made money, and it kind of all balances out.
It's amazing that how you've cultivated that community. It's always so welcoming. I mean, we're laughing because this is a while back now. We sort of went down in full wetsuits and we were going for our swim, and some people in the water kind of look at us going, we don't usually wear wetsuits going in full wetsuits and things, but they're still really welcoming and saying, come in. Like, what are you doing?
And then off you went, like
Yeah.
Actually, I would just like to bring up an incident. Maybe you're the person to talk to about
come on.
this. So obviously we know you and you know what we do. So, we're turning up and we're going to disappear and swim down the coast, all that sort of thing. So, we've now a mate of ours who swims with us, and we're like, oh, we'll go do a Penarth to Lavanok swim. We're going to time it with sunrise. It'll be nice. Killer Tom, who has been swimming with us now for the last 8 months or so.
Hip hop elite in Cardiff.
Hip hop elite, of course, Killer Tom, hip hop DJ. We know him again from another life. It's 15, 20 years ago.
All these people who ended up in the sea.
And now he's in the sea with us, and now he's swimming with us doing what we do. So we were like, oh, we'll go down, we'll time it and say hi to Grant, all that sort of stuff. He'd not been there before. So we rock up. It's like 7 a.m. about a month ago, or maybe a few weeks ago. So it's getting cold now. It's like wetsuits on, gloves, boots, everything. And he's like, yeah, quite excited. Been sold the story. We park on the hill, jump out the car. We literally have made it about 3 steps down towards the slip, and there's a car of like 60-year-old women who've just had their dip. One of them winds down the window, goes, "You cowards! Look at you! What are you doing in wetsuits?" His face dropped. I'm like,
And Tom is a tank. He's an absolute man-mountain
massive.
powerlifting man. He rips wetsuits weekly.
he
He's a huge
literally
man.
does rip wetsuits. The guy is a beast. But
That
he
is class.
he just like his face went white.
I always think you guys are going to motor off into the distance and put everyone's mouths drop to the floor when you disappear off. But anyone who wants to get in the sea, if a wetsuit's what's going to get you in, wear one.
Yeah. I don't think he's gonna. I think there's a TripAdvisor review coming your way, man. I don't think he's like. I don't know if he's gonna be a repeat offender.
If he can put it up, can it be signed off by DJ Killer Tomato? That'd be the highlight of it. I'm trying to remember his name. He's an ex skater who puts out like reviews of Cardiff and valleys and surrounding spaces.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and he did a review of Penarth and Dawnstalkers, and I said, was he having too nice a day, or was he too hungover? Because it was really pleasant. so bring on the TripAdvisor reviews.
I liked him until he absolutely slated where I live. So, yeah, I know the guy.
For reference, where's that?
Penarth. So, obviously, we've talked a lot about it. How do people get involved? What do they do? They want to go for a cold dip.
Just show. Okay, so but Dawnstalkers I always message people back when they ask, and it's just show up, and that's I like a play on words. There's you can just turn up and come in. There's going to be someone there, which is the great part of what the platform's kind of done. There is someone there every day. But you've got to, if you've committed, you've got to show up for yourself and get in, because you're the only person who's going to carry yourself in, particularly when temperatures are what they are at the minute. It's hard, and it's hard every day to walk in.
Yeah.
You put your wetsuit on and think, I don't want to do this, until you get in and get going. But I think cold water, dipping, swimming, find a group of people. So it's not advisable to do it on your own, mainly because if you get into trouble, you want someone there to tell someone else about it or to pull you out.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. It is a Saturday evening, and it is 8:30, and we do need to go make dinner for the kids. But you're in the sea tomorrow morning?
Oh, it looks good tomorrow.
Yep.
It's nice in winter. Sunrises are easier, eh?
Yeah. And you never know what you're going to get as well. I think there's an element of beauty in that when particularly when it looks half and half, but your assumption is it's not going to be great, and you turn up and it's epic. It's you feel like it's an extra win. You've beaten everyone up. You've showed up and got something that no one else has, and.
Yeah. When it comes to winter, it's just getting in as a win, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what you're doing. Just getting in the sea and swimming for 45 minutes or dipping for a minute, whatever, in and out of a wetsuit. It's just getting in as a win, and you get the same feeling after,
Yeah, and it's a building block or a pillar of whatever you're doing next.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've done that to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a building block of my day, for sure.
Yeah. We're the same. We do most of our swims in the morning, around the tides, but aiming for the morning, and it's the best way to start the day. Any final kind of words you want to say on record?
just the cold water has contributed so much to me. I'd recommend, assuming that we all have to say this, but if you don't have any underlying heart conditions, or you've checked yourself out, or if your doctor has said it's going to be okay, who actually asked their doctor whether it's okay to go? But there are so many positives from it. I think it's really worth at least investigating it and having a go, even if you hate it and say I'm not doing it again. It's a pretty easy life hack that it makes a massive difference.
Swim Roots is a production brought to you by Swim Wild Wales and SWA, Swimmers with Attitude. Your hosts are me, Bryce Davis, and Nicholas Young. Additional production and original music by Tom Clugston. Visit swimwildwales.com for information on open water swim coaching, events and guiding, or follow us on social media to keep up to date with our open water swim expeditions and adventures. Thanks for listening.